All right. Hey, if you have your Bible today, we are going to be in John chapter 21 is where we're going to be. John chapter 21. You can use your Bible. If you don't have a Bible at all, you can use the BCN Bible in the pew in front of you. That is our gift to you if you want to take that with you. Or you can follow online at bcnazarene.org/gatherings. We lost an hour of sleep. Am I talking too fast? Are we okay? Everybody good? Everybody awake? Maybe a little late this morning? No, you're like, no, we were on time. We nailed that. It's always interesting because I sit right down front, and so I have no idea the distinction because I don't really turn around by the time between the time the music starts and I get up here. And so sometimes in that distinction, like when I get up here, I was like, oh, wow, there are people here this morning. At 9 o'clock, when I locked in there were no one. So it's good to see you. We're glad you're here. Hey, as you're going there, I want to let you know two things that are going on. First one is Easter is coming up, and we have some exciting things going on here as a church. First off, we will have our regularly scheduled services at 9 and 11 on Easter Sunday morning. Those will be fantastic. You will not want to miss being a part of that. And we have an Easter egg hunt as a church that is going to be the day before March 31st at 11 a.m. We are seeking 20,000 eggs to hide for small children. Eggs with candy. Okay, not with the yolk and stuff. You got that. You figured that. But this is what I want you to know as we're looking at that. Easter is one of the absolute best times of the year to invite a friend to be a part of what's happening. And so that's why we planned this with this in mind. So what you're going to see over the next couple weeks, we're going to share a whole bunch of stuff, videos and things like that on social media. We have invite cards out at the Welcome Center. This is what I want to encourage you to do. If you have a friend with kids, invite them to the egg hunt. Take the card with you. It's got the information for the services Sunday morning right there. Once they're at the egg hunt, invite them to come Sunday morning. If you have friends who don't have kids, maybe don't invite them to the egg hunt because they could still come, but that would be weird to be like, hey, grown woman or man with kids out of the house, come hunt eggs. I brought a basket for you. So maybe don't do that. But this is one of the best opportunities in a year to invite a friend. So whether it's a friend, a family member, a coworker, a neighbor, anyone like that, I'd really encourage you. We're going to announce this the next couple weeks to just keep it for you. So share it on social media, grab an invite card, do something like that. Do whatever you can to get your friends to church on that Sunday morning, especially Easter Sunday morning. And the other thing is going on today. Today is the first of 2 weeks that we have group signups that are open. And so a group for us is a group of 8 to 12 people who meet usually about every week, sometimes only 2 or 3 times a month. We hang out, we share, sometimes we talk about the message. I always clarify to my group that we talk about the content of the message, not the quality of the message. My group does this thing that's really fun because they know that I enter my group as a group member, not as the pastor. And so they don't refer to it when we're talking about the message. They'll never say to me, they'll never go, well, Kevin, you said this morning, we refer to him as the speaker, which is just the best thing ever. So we're in my group. They're like, well, the speaker this morning said, I was like, oh yeah, that was good job, speaker. So get together, talk about how it's shaping our lives. And so this is the first of 2 weeks that we have signups. I want to say if you've never tried being a part of a small group, this is one of the best times to do it because the spring term for groups only lasts 8 weeks. And then most of our groups break for summer and we'll do some hangouts, but they don't meet weekly. And so if you're nervous about getting in the group with the wrong people or people who are weird or stuff like that, only 8 weeks. It'll take you at least 3 weeks to figure out these people are really strange and you don't like them. And by then, you're almost halfway done. So there you go. So great time to join a small group. So you can access that on the website and sign up there or go out to the lobby and be a part of it. And so today what I want to do as we're doing group signups is I am somewhat talking about signing up for a group and why you should be a part of a group. But not really, because today is not really about something that I want you to do, but someone who I believe that we all need to become. And so let me explain it like this. Today's message in the service that we have together this morning is really a work of imagination. And I know that's not something we talk about often as adults. We don't talk about the important work of imagination because we relegate that to children and we assume imagination is about like picturing purple elephants with pink polka dots and like that's all imagination is. But here's what's so important to understand. If you don't have a clear picture of what you want the future to look like, you can't live into it. It isn't until you're able to imagine a better future that you can walk into that future. And so some of the most important, like integral work we need to do as adults is the work of imagination, because the reality is that there's a whole bunch of imagined futures for you out there already. Watch any commercial. In 30 seconds, that's what they're doing. They're imagining your future and then showing how their product is the solution to the future you want to live into. That's what every single bit of advertising is. And the reality is that if we live into most of those futures, not within the products themselves, but into most of the futures that are being imagined for us, they will slowly sap our joy and they will turn us into people who we were never created to become. So one of the most important things we can do is say, okay, what future am I living in towards? What kind of person am I becoming? Not what am I doing? That's not the more important question. The important question is not what am I doing or what do I need to do? The important question is who do I need to become and who am I becoming? And so that's what we're going to focus on today. So we're going to talk a little bit about groups, but it's not about something you need to do. It's about someone who you need to become. So with that said, the passages that we're going to look at 3 different ones today. I'm going to invite you to turn to 2 of them, is John chapter 21. This is what is taking place in John chapter 21. We see an important conversation play out between Jesus and Peter, and this is often referred to as Peter's reinstallation. And this is why Peter needed to be reinstalled. This is why he needed to be like reinstituted in that relationship. Peter is the guy, if you read through the pages of scripture, he's the guy who gets all the press for all the wrong reasons. Like almost every single time Peter comes up, who has a friend like that? They're infamous. And I just really wish not. No one has a friend like that? Who does it? I mean, if you don't have a friend like that, you probably are that friend, just to be clear, because every group has the one. They're like, oh yeah, they're the one who everyone knows who says the dumb stuff and everyone's aware of. That's Peter. Like Peter is the guy who Jesus is walking on water and he's like, invite me to come with you. He says, come. And he starts walking on the water and then he sees a wave and he sinks. It's like, Peter, come on. Peter at one point in time rebuked Jesus. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't rebuke your spouse in public. There's one. And you should never rebuke Jesus. Never rebuke Jesus. Jesus telling a group of people, he's saying, hey, the people that are going to take me, they're gonna take me, they're gonna put me on trial, they're gonna crucify me, but I'm gonna come back from the grave. And Peter comes up to Jesus, he's like, hey, you shouldn't tell people that. Let's not talk about that. The crowd, they're not big fans of the whole crucifixion talk. And don't rebuke Jesus in public. And then this is another, he even tops it off, is Jesus tells Peter before he's taken, Jesus tells Peter, he says, hey, before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. 3 different times, you're going to deny that you ever knew me. And Peter goes, nope, no, I won't. So don't rebuke Jesus in public. Don't call Jesus a liar. That's kind of just general Christianity 101 things. And Peter fails at all these things over and over again. And so what happens is that as Jesus is being led to be crucified, Peter is following him at a distance, and he keeps encountering these different people. 2 of the 3 people who he encounters are akin to junior high girls. They're about the same age as junior high girls. And Peter is scared of the junior high girls. And so they say, hey, you knew Jesus? He's like, no, terrified, shudders at the junior high girls. Which, I mean, right? I get that a little bit, right? We understand that. You're walking through the mall, there's a group of junior high girls who look at you and start laughing at you. You're not feeling good. I've seen Mean Girls. I know how it goes, okay? And so that's kind of Peter. He denies him 3 different times. And then what happens is after Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, he comes back to the disciples and they eat a meal together. And what we're about to see is the first significant conversation between Jesus and Peter. And this is what it says in John chapter 21, starting in verse 15. It says, after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied. You know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. A third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. Upon first reading, it is easy to assume, especially the way the language plays out, that the reason why Peter is offended is simply because Jesus kept peppering him with the same question, which I understand. When I get asked the same thing over and over again, I'm not a fan of it either. I understand this when Bethany, my wife, does this, but Molly, my 3-year-old, the other day, she comes up to me, she's looking for the white remote, the remote that controls our television, and she says, do you know where the white remote is? I'm sitting on the couch. I said, no, I don't. She said, get up. I went, what? 3-year-old looks right at me, get up. I was like, it's not under me. Get up. Molly, it's not under me. I promise you. I sat down. I did not sit down on the remote. Get up. So I got up. It wasn't under me. That would have been the conclusion of that. Like, just to prove my 3-year-old wrong. And so I was offended that she asked me 3 times to get up over the remote. And so that would be the thing that you would think is taking place in this passage. It's not. The distinction is language. Tech team, I want to go back through this again if we could. So back in verse 15. It says, after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? This is what is lost. In Greek, the language they spoke and the language that the New Testament was written in, there are 3 different words they have for love. We have 1. And so what we do is we make a distinction between love and like, where they had more subtle nuances that were clear with the language that they spoke. And so when he speaks this first word, the first word that he's saying there, Peter, do you love, or Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? The word that he is using is the word agape. Would you turn to your neighbor and say agape? Agape means an unconditional love. That's what agape is. Agape is a covenantal love. It is a love that does not have restrictions, that does not have conditions. It is a love that is acted upon no matter what the other person is doing. And so we understand that our love from our Heavenly Father is an agape love. It is not restricted based upon our actions, behaviors, or desires. It is always there because it is agape. We don't see many instances of this kind of covenantal love today. What we have today is a conditional love. At one point in time, it was assumed that marriage was a covenantal love. It was an agape. It wasn't conditional based upon things. That's not as true today. About the only instance we still see today of a covenantal love is the love between a parent and a child. Like, that's about the only thing in our culture today that still embodies this essence of love. Because what we see in relationships is someone goes, hey, this isn't working out for me. Somebody will turn to them and say, oh, do your own thing. Make yourself happy. You should do what you want. That doesn't work for parents. They say, my 2-year-old, they're making me crazy. Like my 2-year-old, they're driving me like, oh my goodness, I just can't handle them. No one looks at that parent and says, do your own thing. They'll get along. They're fine. They'll figure it out. Go find a new family without a 2-year-old. Like, right? That's absurd. We don't talk like that today because we still view that as a covenantal love. We still view that as an agape love. Now, there's 2 other words in Greek that they use for love. So agape is that unconditional, it's top of the shelf love. It is covenantal love. The second type of love is eros. We don't find that in this passage. Eros is a romantic love. That's why Jesus doesn't say to Peter, Peter, do you eros me? Because that would be all kinds of weird. And so that's not what's taking place. The third kind of love that does come out in this passage is the word phileo. Phileo is a brotherly love. That's why we have the city of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, because it is that third kind of love. It is a phileo type of love. So you remember, turn to your neighbor, tell them phileo. Say, I phileo you. That just got awkward for some of you. Oh, this is weird. Here's the thing that's so hard is like we see these distinctions. I still wish we had these distinctions today because it is like unacceptable for me to go to like Ty in my small group and just be like, Ty, I love you. And he's got to like run it through his head like, what kind of love? Agape? Probably not. Eros? Hope not. Phileo? Because if I could just go to him like, dude, I phileo you, he'd be like, yeah, man, me too. Bro hug, and then we're gone, and it's good. But like that doesn't happen here. So at the beginning, Simon, son of John, do you agape me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied, you know I love you. Then feed my lambs. He gives them an output. The followers of Christ are often referred to as sheep. That's the thing. So he's saying, hey, the people who follow Christ, the people who call themselves Christians, the people who claim Christ's work in their life, you are to feed them. You are to, this is important to understand what that means. You are to give them what they need in order to grow in their faith. That's what it means to feed sheep. It is not, Jesus is not saying to Peter in this moment, the people who follow me, you need to give them what they want. Just keep letting them eat over and over again. Did you know sheep can overeat? They can. It's very detrimental to their health if sheep overeat. Of course you know that, because Christians in the 21st century can overeat as well. We're not talking physical, we're talking spiritual. I hope we get that. We can overeat. And that can be problematic. And so he's saying in this moment, hey, if you unconditionally love me, then you need to give my people what they need in order to grow. Verse 16, Jesus repeated the same question. Simon, son of John, do you agape, unconditionally love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know I love you, then take care of my sheep. Jesus said, a third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, he switches the word, do you phileo me? Do you love me even like a brother? It says Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. It's not so much that he asked the question a third time, it was the way in which he asked the question. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Then feed my sheep. Now, this is what happens, is we get so kind of entranced sometimes at the distinctions in the language, which is fascinating. Like, it's fascinating that upon common reading in our English Bibles that we don't get that he's showing them there's different levels of love, that we miss the point that Jesus is making. And in this passage, what Jesus is doing is he's setting a standard for his followers. He's saying, Not just he's saying like, if you love me, it has implications for how you live your life. And our tendency is our tendency to go is the people who have implications for the way they live out their faith are the people who are more advanced than I am. It's the people who get it. It's the people who are further down the path. And we look at this calling, we say, hey, the calling to feed sheep, the calling to give others what they need in order to grow. What has happened in our world today is that calling has been relegated to paid clergy. Because that's my job, isn't it? Like, right? Like that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. And if I'm supposed to do that, then you're not, right? But what Jesus is saying here is so important, is he doesn't say, hey, Peter, do you have the right qualifications? Do you have a degree in biblical studies? Peter, have you been following me long enough? Peter, do you have an office in the church? Then feed my lambs. No, that's not what he says. And he doesn't even say, this is what's so important to understand. He doesn't even say, do you unconditionally love me? Then feed my sheep. No, he drops the bar much lower and sets the same standard. Do you love me like a brother? Are you a friend? This guy who had been following him for 3.5 years, he says, like, is there anything? Then be a part of this. This is your responsibility to do what you need to do to help others grow. The Apostle Paul picks up on this in 1 Thessalonians in the letter that he writes. He says, hey, if there is any encouragement, if there's any unity in Christ, if there's any comfort, he's basically saying, hey, if faith has given you anything, then he continues, he says, make my joy complete, be like-minded, one in unity and purpose. What Jesus and the Apostle Paul are both saying in that same vein, he says like, hey, if there is anything, then act on it. The standard is that love has implications, which is something that we don't often get today. So the other day, The Bachelor was on at my house. I don't know how it got on, but it was on. And so what is happening, if you're unfamiliar, so there's all these people and there's one guy and he gives them roses and all these other things. And it basically gets down to the end that there's like 2 girls left for this one bachelor and he's got to pick one of them. And he's told both of them that he loves them. Oh, man. And so you got to go through this awkward thing that happens every single season. The dramatic people have like different hair color, but that's about the only distinction on the different seasons of The Bachelor. Is so they come together and he's told both of them that he loves them. And so they come forward and he picks one of them. And then like a couple months later, they have to have this really awkward conversation. She's like, but you told me that you loved me. You told both of us that you loved us? How could that be? How could you tell 2 people that you love them at the same time? And then like they go through all that and then Chris Harrison gets up there and he's just like, whew, that was a lot. We'll be back. Sorry, that's my whole Bachelor impression right there. You're welcome. But it's always that question that throws me off where they're like, how could he tell both of us that he loves us? I tell you how, because he didn't have to do anything. Like it makes it really easy to make proclamations of love when you don't have to do anything with that love, where you just go, yeah, I can just say it. If I told my wife every single day that I love her and never did another thing and never spoke to her, like that wouldn't be love. Because love has implications. It is meant to be lived out. It is forced to be lived out in different ways. God's love for us has implications. This is important to understand. This is why God will not leave you where he found you. Because he is about your joy. And so when you are caught in patterns, in behaviors, in habits that lead to destruction and slowly suck the joy out of your life, the loving thing for God to do is not to leave you there, but to pull you out of it. And then sometimes this is what happens, is God will find us here and he's seeking to move us further into his joy. And so instead of going willfully, because the God that we serve is good, we do it kicking and screaming every step of the way. And then when we finally get there, we go, oh yeah, this is good. I'm glad I'm here. And then we go, oh no, God wants to move you here even further. We go, not again. And we do it kicking and screaming all over and over again. Because God's love has implications for us. And in the same way, our love has implications. It must be lived out. Except instead of just being lived out by us singing worship songs over and over again, it's meant to be lived out in the community that we live in. So he says, not just if you unconditionally love me, but if there is anything, if you love me like a brother, if we're kind of friends, then feed my sheep. Do what you need to do in order to help others grow in their faith. Now, this conversation has a profound impact on Peter. And this is what we're going to see, is we're going to see this man who rebuked Jesus, who called Jesus a liar, all of a sudden he changes. And when Jesus gives him this calling to feed his sheep, to help others grow in their faith, Peter takes it seriously. So years later, the Apostle Paul, who goes around, plants churches all around the known world, and then writes letters back to these churches to encourage and instruct them in their faith. He writes a letter to the church in Galatia. We understand this letter today as the book of Galatians. And when he is writing this letter, he describes Peter and 2 of the other disciples and the impact that they have had on faith. I want to show you how Paul describes them. This is in Galatians chapter 2, verse 9. It says this: in fact, James, Peter, and John, who were known as pillars of the church. And he continues on to talk about the impact that these 3 men have had on his faith. But that is the word that he uses. He says, these guys, they are pillars in the church. So I started studying and I said, why would Paul use the word pillar? And here's the cool thing, is pillars were common in that day and age. This picture that you're gonna see is a picture of a temple in the 1st century. Okay, so this would have been around. Paul would have walked past this. He would have seen this structure when he writes that Peter, James, and John were pillars. Peter, who struggled, is now a pillar of the church. So I said, why would he use the word pillar? And so I jumped into these like structural engineering textbooks to figure out the role of pillars. And then I decided that's silly, and so I went to Wikipedia, which was way better. I said, what is a pillar? And this was the description of a pillar. This is great. A pillar is a part of something greater by taking a weight and through compression, transmitting that weight back to the foundation. Oh, that's good. I was like, maybe I just need to read that definition and we can pray and go home. It takes a weight greater upon itself. When it is compressed, it transmits that weight back to the foundation. And this is what I thought. I thought, man, we have all these terms that we've used in the church for centuries to describe leadership in the church, and most of them come down to positions. So we have deacons and elders, and if you have a Catholic background, you had priests and bishops and cardinals and popes, and we have board members and leadership team members and Sunday school teachers and group leaders and ushers and volunteers, and the list goes on, and we have come up with countless different names to describe leadership positions in the church. And my thought when I read that was, we don't need more people in positions of leadership. We need more people who are pillars. We need people who are willing to say, I am going to accept a weight that is not my own because it's better and I'm a part of something bigger. I will accept the work of and difficulty of compression because of that weight and transmit it back to the foundation because the foundation that I stand upon is solid and it can hold it. Just to be clear, if you're from the South, to make sure that there's no distinction, when we say pillars, we're not talking about the soft things that you lay your head upon at night, just so we're all on the same page. Somewhere in a hotel in Tennessee, someone is having the same conversation. They're calling down to the front desk, and they're saying, we need more pillars. And so I just want to make sure we're all there. Pillars, not pillars. Pillars is what we're talking about. It's so important that we embody this, to understand that, hey, you know what? I could just stand on my own. This is the amazing thing that I read about pillars, is that a pillar is actually more sturdy when it accepts that weight from above. That when a pillar is standing on its own, it is susceptible to lateral forces pushing it or knocking it over or moving it from its foundation. And so if there's a strong wind, if there's a force of some sort, if there's shaking in the foundation beneath, when a pillar doesn't have that weight, it is actually weaker. But when the weight is pressed upon the pillar and it accepts that compression, what happens is the pillar is locked into place, that it won't budge. And so when I planted a church, we would talk about this all the time. We would say, hey, we have all these new people who have started coming. What can we do to anchor them in their faith to make sure they keep coming? And so we had come up with this brilliant solution. We said, we need to get them serving. Because if they're serving, they have to be here. That's what that is. It's being locked in place. It's removing excuses. It's making sure you're not budging from the spot that you're going to be in. Years and years ago when I was a teacher, I heard a speaker say this. I thought it was amazing. He's talking about he'd been married for 50 some odd years. He had all these kids, had all these grandkids. I don't remember anything he said other than this one word. He said, I'm too far in to get back out. And that's a good thing. I thought that's brilliant. This idea of I'm going to deliberately put myself so deep in a certain spot that there is no way for me to exit quickly, because that is precisely where I need to be. I thought that's what I need to do. I need to put myself so deep into relationships that when my tendency is to isolate myself, it's too difficult for me to get out of there. Because when I'm going through difficulty, that is precisely where I need to be. And so I'm going to make sure that when it comes to the good things of my life, I have no escape route, that there's no exit plan, that it would be incredibly hard for me to work my way back out. When I talk to couples, when we do premarital counseling, which I'm very bad at, okay, just to be clear, because I've had some people ask me, it was like, I'm a terrible counselor because I just say, well, this is what you should do. Should we pray? I mean, I have no band behind me to have a worship song, so don't ask me to do premarital counseling because I'm very, very bad at it. I'll find you a good counselor. But one of the things I'll say is like, hey, couples, if you're married, you need to have a shared bank account. Like you do. You need to make sure that there is no escape route. You need to make it as hard as possible for you to exit quietly and cleanly. Like that is a healthy thing to do. Don't make it easy to escape out of the circumstance you're in. And that is what Paul is talking about. He's saying Peter is a pillar. He's too far in. There's too much weight on him in order for him to get back out. And what's happened today is we have this conversation of pillars and things like that. The language for us in the 21st century has really been lost. And we talk about this idea of accepting a weight that isn't your own and it's the best thing that you could possibly do. It sounds like a foreign language because we don't speak in these terms today. And so let me give you an example. So this is a conversation that I have semi-frequently. Someone will come up to me, and when we're talking about church membership or anything like that, they'll say, hey, why should I be a member? What benefit is there for me to be a member? And I feel this incredible pressure to make up something like reserved parking, free coffee, I don't know. What benefit is there for me to be a member? And here's the struggle with my response, is it's the wrong question. And I can't come up with the right answer to the wrong question. And so here's the answer. There's no benefit. There's no benefit. Like you can vote, but that's a dumb benefit. There's no benefit. But church was never meant to function like a club. When you join a club, you're looking for perks and benefits. Church was always meant to function like a family. And what has happened is consumer language has so saturated who we've become that we can't even see how embedded in it we really are. And so even when we come into relationships that are meant to be covenantal at their core, they're meant to be unconditional. We don't understand how to even look at them outside of the perspective of how does this benefit me? What are the perks that I'm receiving in the relationship? So what do I tell people with my 4 kids is say, hey, this is why you should have kids. And I've got no list. Fortunately, they're still in the kids program, okay? Once they're teenagers, I'll have to switch my language a little bit. Here's the benefit of having children. Sleep? No. All my clothes have stains. That's not a benefit. Less money. I watch shows that I don't want to watch. My Netflix queue is destroyed. It's just like, what is that? And so just looking at her like, what is that? Like, I love them. And it sounds like a trite answer, but it's actually everything. And we've become so embedded in perks and personal benefits that we can't even see our way out of it. And so I get to hang out with pastors a decent amount. And anytime I have a conversation with a pastor about where their church is struggling, they always talk to me about one of 2 things. The first thing that they'll ask is, how do I get my young people to engage? How do I get the young couples, the young families, the people with busy, hectic schedules? How do I get them to engage when they're so busy? Or they talk about a second thing. How do I get the old people to change? I have the same conversation over and over again. How do I get the young people to engage? How do I get the old people to change? And my thought is always this. Man, if that is our furthest imagination for our picture of the church and what the bride of Christ was meant to be, we are failing miserably. We are failing miserably. Because I thought this was meant to be something far deeper than that, than engage and change. I thought it was meant to be something far more significant than that. Then you need to shift this and you need to come a little more. And so when Jesus tells his disciples, when he gives them their calling, and he says, take up your cross and follow me. And then he was crucified. So they knew that it wasn't a metaphor, that he was talking literally. This is the level of sacrifice that it requires. And this is worth it. And what we've come today is, what's the benefit? No reserved parking? No, thank you. Now this has a profound impact on Paul. So remember, Peter, who failed Jesus over and over again, Jesus, who has this conversation with Peter and reinstates him, Peter, who is transformed by that conversation and is now widely known as a pillar of the church. I want to show you the impact that this had on Paul because I want you to see how this keeps going. We're going to be in Romans chapter 1, and we're going to look at 4 quick verses in Romans chapter 1. And so Paul wrote his letter to the church in Galatia in the year 53, 54, somewhere within there. Okay, 53, 54 is when he wrote his letter to the church in Galatia. 1 year later, he writes his letter to the church in Rome. So the next letter that Paul writes is to the church in Rome. And so with fresh in his mind, the impact that Peter as a pillar has had on the church, this is what Paul writes to the church in Rome in Romans chapter 1. I'm going to start in verse 8 so you have background and context, but the important part happens in 11 and 12. It says this: "Let me say first that I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith in him is being talked about all over the world." He's saying, hey, this church in Rome, everyone is talking about the significance of your faith. "God knows how often I pray for you. Day and night I bring you and your needs in prayer to God, whom I serve with all my heart by spreading the good news about his son. One of the things I always pray for is the opportunity, God willing, to come at last to see you." Now, this is what Paul wants. He says, I want to see you. This is why. "For I long to visit you so I can bring you some spiritual gift that will help you grow strong in the Lord." That's a good reason, isn't it? He said, I want to visit you so I can do something that will encourage your faith. He said, I am willing to risk traveling all over the world to get to you so that your faith will be stronger than it was previously. And then it says this, and we often miss it. He says, "When we get together, I want to encourage you in your faith, but I also want to be encouraged by yours." I want to encourage you in your faith, but I also want to be encouraged by yours. This is what it sounds like. It sounds like Paul's kind of going, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Doesn't it? I want to encourage you, I want to be encouraged by yours. Hey, Paul, nice shirt. Thanks so much, I got it on sale. Hey, church in Rome, nice sandals. Thanks so much. They're $5. They're the kind Jesus wore. We appreciate it. Okay, that kind of sounds like what's going on here. But this is what we miss within it. Why is Paul coming? To bring them a gift so that their faith would be stronger. And so when he's encouraged by their faith, what is his encouragement? That their faith is growing. That's what is Paul's encouragement. And so he's saying, hey, I want to do whatever I can to encourage you in your faith. And if your faith is growing, then that is all the encouragement I need. He's saying, your growth is my encouragement. The thing that fuels my faith is watching your faith move forward. In this moment, Paul is not concerned about himself at all. He's not saying, hey, let's make sure this relationship is balanced. Let's make sure we're both getting something out of it. No, in this moment, he's saying, I will travel all over the world to help your faith grow. And if your faith is growing, that is all that I need. Now, we want that, don't we? Like when we hear people who are like that, we go, isn't that incredible? Like someone who lives selflessly, someone who is willing to pour their life out for those around them. We hold these people up and we admire them and we think they're absolutely incredible. Our failure, though, is not a lack of desire. Our failure is a lack of action. We say, hey, we need people who are pillars. We would go, yes, that's what I want. But then we don't ever live it out, which is always where their failure is. We want financial margin, but we don't save, right? We want knowledge, but we watch Netflix. We want abs, but we don't do planks, right? And so we see this over and over again. We desire greatness, but we act selfishly. We want to be a part of a place that is deeply engaged, but we want to sit back and enjoy what's happening mostly. We want to see significant things take place. We want to see people find hope, and yet we fail to invite. The issue is not the desire. The desire is there. The issue is the action that takes place. And so if you're going to step out in that, if you're going to be a pillar, if you're going to be someone who would be known, not as, oh, they're amazing, oh, they're so talented, oh, they're so incredible, they have this position and that position and that position, but someone would go, hey, they can carry my weight. Like, because they are dug deep down into a foundation that is strong, they can handle more than their own life. They can be compressed and face that difficulty in a moment. They can bear the burdens of those around them so that they can move forward, and they're not worried about themselves because their encouragement is your growth in that moment. We need to get serious about it and live it out. And so this is what's going to happen as you face that. I want to be abundantly clear with you on this, is every single time that happens, every single time something changes, every single time something new comes up, our instinctual response, our habitual response is to think, how does this affect me? How does this benefit me? That's reality. I get that. But the essence of discipleship, the essence of spiritual maturity is to acknowledge that and then to be unwilling to stay there. Like, I understand that if something happens that's unexpected, if something happens that you don't like, our immediate response always is, how does this affect me? How does this benefit me? I don't like this. But the mark of spiritual maturity, the mark of a pillar, is to shift yourself off of that as quickly as you possibly can and say, it's not about me. It's not about my preference. It's not about why I'm here. It's about me being here for others. It's about me benefiting others. It's not about how my faith is pleased and its preferences come in, but it's how I help others grow in that moment. And so this is what you're going to have to do. Is you're going to have to talk back to that voice. I can tell you what doesn't happen. If I could explain it like this, if we could see these pillars up here, these guys aren't complaining back and forth to each other. You get that? Like, that's why they're here. Like this guy isn't up here going like, oh my goodness, can you believe how heavy this is? Like, no one even looks at us. Everyone just stares at the roof. That's why we've been here. We were here first. We were here before the roof. I know, you're right. It's so hard. This is ridiculous. We've been here this whole time. They don't even care. My goodness, they'll probably paint the ceiling black and nothing we can do about that. That was probably a little too touchy within that. I'll keep going. Okay. You're going to have to talk back to that voice. You are going to have to. And so when the voice comes in and something is different, and you go, oh my gosh, they said a mean thing to you. You should cut off your relationship with them. They probably don't like you. You can't just let it sit there. Because what's going to happen is there's going to be people around you who are going to encourage that selfish voice. Yeah, right, they have no right to talk to you like that. Why would they say that? Don't be okay with that. You're entitled to more than that. And you're going to have to not let it sit there, and you're going to have to go, no. I'm a pillar. I'm not here for me. My life is bigger than that. When the voice comes in and it says over and over again, yeah, you've done a lot. You can just sit back. You've spent your time. You've done everything that needs to do. You're going to have to respond. If you say, no, that's not my life. I want a life that is bigger than that. If you want a life that is bigger than yourself, you're going to have to live for something that is beyond yourself. And so in order to do that, you're going to have to actually respond to the voice inside your head that seeks to have you pursue every bit of selfishness that is within you. And you're going to have to respond and go, that's not me. That's not the life that I want. I want a life that is bigger than that. And so you're going to have a life that is beyond that has other people around you and say, hey, I understand this is difficult in the moment, but let me tell you, I understand this is hard for you, but here's the deal. I am strong enough for both of us right now in this moment. And so I'm not going to simply see you in your struggle and make you suffer for it. I will help take your weight upon you because the foundation that I'm in is strong, because I will be a pillar in this moment. I'm not going to walk around with a badge, like a name tag that says, I'm a pillar. Here we go. You just live it out over and over again through a life that is selfless, through a life that doesn't pursue your preferences over everything else. And so here's the deal. We talked about groups a long time ago. This is where it comes in with groups. Is you may need to join a group because you need to share your story, because you need to hear someone else's story, or because you may need a friend. You may need to join a group for those reasons. But here's the reality, is you may need to join a group because someone needs to hear your story, because someone else needs you to listen, because someone else needs you to be a friend. You don't join a group because you go, I've got all these needs and I need people to fulfill them. You join it and you're a part of it because you go, I want to be a part of something bigger and I want to help people. And so this is what I want to invite. We invited a couple people to come up to share the story. I'm going to invite you to go ahead and do that now. And you're going to have to move fast and come that way. There you go. Tony's fast. I appreciate that. So this is what we invited. These are people who are part of a group. And we invited to come up to share about the impact that the group has made in their life. And so that was kind of the preface. Say, hey, we're going to give you just a couple minutes on the stage. If you guys will just come right there so you're in the shot. A couple minutes on the stage and share the impact that a group has made in your life. Tony was here. These are all members of the same group. James Stacy could not be here. He's on the Sprinter retreat with our youth right now. So he said, hey, just take a couple minutes, share the impact that the group has made in their life. That's what we told them we were going to do. That's not what we're going to do. And so what has happened is these are people, and if you get a chance, go back and watch the 9 o'clock service as well, is Dusty and Nicole are people who have served as pillars for college-age students in our church, and they have opened up their home and poured out their lives to make a difference. And so while they thought they were coming up here to share their testimony about how the group has made an impact in their life, what they're going to do is they're going to watch people share about how they have been a pillar in their life. So let's take a look.
Small group experience here at BCN has just been fantastic. It's so nice to be able to just have a place Sunday nights where we can hang out and talk about the sermon and eat food and just get to know the people here at BCN a little bit better.
Being in a small group here at BCN has really just allowed us to be poured into by older people and people that have a lot more life experience, experience their lives as they're in the next generation raising kids.
Dusty and Nicole are the best. I really don't know where to begin with them. They've been like our home away from home, parents away from parents, especially for young, just out of college kids.
Yeah, I think having Dusty and Nicole as leaders of our small group has led to a lot of inside jokes, a lot of good times, a lot of memories that we'll look back on 20, 30 years from now and be like, wow, I missed that, or just super grateful for the times that we have had. I want Dusty and Nicole to know that I've enjoyed them allowing me to be a part of their lives and hanging out with Declan and even babysitting him, Tony changing his first diaper, which was hilarious. For you guys, it's just been awesome to have a mom and dad here in Beavercreek that we can go to not only have fun but also have really serious talks with and just continue to grow as young adults.
My encouragement to Nicole and Dusty would be to just keep on keeping on. Do what you do. You're doing it so well, and the impact that you've had on us, and I'm sure countless others, has just been immeasurable, and I'm at a loss for words other than that, really. It's just, yeah, we love you so much.
Phileo right there, phileo. Hey, I'm not going to make you guys share after all that. Yeah, you're good. Hey, would you give Dusty and Nicole a round of applause? Thank you so much for that. You guys can go. You're good. That's all we had. All that preparation. Thanks, man. It was awesome. So here's the thing that I want you to say. This is important. I've been a part of a group my entire adult life. At no point in time in the entire time I've been in ministry have I ever gone, you know what I really need? I need another night of the week that is scheduled with church stuff. That's what I need the most, more than anything else. Mandatory weekly church activity. I don't have enough of it already. No. But I've been in a group for my entire adult life. And there's been many times that I've been on the pillar side of the equation. And there's many times, although I didn't know I needed, I have benefited from people who have been pillars in my life. So this is what I've gotten to see over the last year. I've gotten to watch my friend Ty move from once every 3 weeks, I'm not getting involved, I'm sitting in the back, to I'm leading worship and I'm excited about it. And I cannot tell you how encouraging that has been for me to watch him grow in his faith and move through that. And so I just want to give you a couple things. First one is this. Is one of the amazing things about BCN is pastors here stay forever Like, it's astounding. Most pastors in churches stay like 2 years. Almost every single one of your pastors in your history has stayed for like double-digit years. So if you don't like me, get over it. Basically, we'll start with that. I tell my wife that all the time. I took it too far. I apologize. No, but I've just been amazed by that. And honestly, one of the biggest things over the last year or so is I've been trying to figure out, why is that? And let me tell you why. It's because BCN is full of pillars. Like, BCN is not a church that goes, paid staff, paid clergy, that's your job. You go do it, you feed the sheep. No, it's this culture of hundreds and hundreds of people who say, I will do what I need to do to get it done. My encouragement is your growth, and so whatever I have to do, that is what I will act upon in this moment. And so first off, I just want to say thank you for that. But second off, I do want to say this, is I challenge you within that to go deeper and further into that than you currently are. Because the reality is this, is the pull back to consumer language is so easy and so subtle, we often don't realize how embedded we are within it. And so my challenge and my encouragement to you is to live a life that is selfless, to live a life that is egoless, to live a life that is not consumed in any way, shape, or form with your preferences or how you benefit, but to simply say, I will bear the burden of those around me and I will carry their weight so they can move further in their faith than they ever could without me, because I want to be a part of something greater than just myself and just my own life. And so take that as your challenge. Don't see how you can benefit from simply coming here and being part of this. Pour yourself out and watch your faith grow like it never has before in your life. And so the third thing, though, that I want to invite you to is to understand that you cannot do that unless your foundation is secure. If your foundation is not solid, if your foundation is not Jesus, whenever that weight is pressed upon you, you will crumble over and over again. And so this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to invite you to stand, if you would. In every service we do this, we want to invite you, if you never have before, to place Jesus at the center of your life, to ask his forgiveness for your sins, and to understand that your salvation is found in him. And so if you have never made that decision today, in just a second, I'm going to pray a prayer, and I invite you to repeat after me out loud these words of confession together. In Romans 10:9, it says that if you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, then you will be saved. And this is what is going to happen as you do that, is everyone around you has already made that decision is going to pray it out loud as well. Not because we love to say things out loud in church, but because we want to encourage you in your faith, and we need that confession as well to encourage ourselves and understand that this is our foundation. So if you've never prayed that before, or if you already have as an encouragement to those around you, I invite you to repeat after me. Lord, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world, that he was raised from the dead to forgive my sins. I receive your grace by faith. Come into my life. I will follow you. Amen. Hey, if you just prayed that decision today, we want to celebrate with you and all that you do. So I invite you to this. As you go, if you're not a part of a group, join a group if you'd like to. We have a station there. You can go to the website to sign up within that and to make that a significant step of your faith. But more than anything else, hear this. Be a pillar. Be someone who others can count on. Live a life that is bigger than yourself. And you can only do that by getting beyond yourself and looking to the needs of those around you. Go in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. You're dismissed.